Hey folks, welcome to Hobbyshire. My name is Chris and today is the start of a big project, and wow, what a journey it has been so far already. Before I get into that though, let me quickly go through the actual roadmap, so to speak, of this new big project that for now I'll call Project Warzone. So this is my ultimate plan, and I know, my artistic skills are amazing, but let's pretend for now that I'm not the next Leonardo da Vinci. What I want to make... Sorry guys, I know, but you can tell, the drawing is bad, but you can tell what it is. What I want to make is a battle board, kind of. It's smaller than a normal one, more like a skirmish board, or at least it can be used as one when I play Warhammer on it. For me specifically, with its first use, it's going to be a board for a custom D&D campaign. I'll be hosting it with my group in a few months. I've written the campaign myself, and this board is the setting for one of the major chapters. There are a few different points of interest, as you can see, and today we are going to be working on the bridge. I was originally going to do this entire project in one massive video, but I did a vote on the channel a little while ago to see if you folks preferred single big videos or whether you preferred to have large videos broken down into multiple smaller ones. The preference of multiple smaller videos won dominantly with 75% of the votes. So like I say, I will break it down, Project Warzone, and today will be the bridge. Even the bridge might have to be in two parts, as I put so much work into this, it took a long time, but I don't know yet, we'll see how it goes. I will skim over some of the steps that are very basic and don't require extended video footage, but I will include every step so that if you want to follow along, you can make an epic skirmish board like this. So let's make a cup of tea and get started. Alrighty, so here is my initial drawing of the bridge that I wanted to make. I did do my best to draw it to scale, but I will say right now that I do end up tweaking parts and changing sections as I work on it. That's the beauty of it being your creation. You can change whatever you like, whenever you like. I wanted it to be a big bridge because it's the main landmark on this board, so I really wanted it to stand out. I also didn't want it to be exactly like every other bridge I see repeated online. I wanted it to be a little different and a little unique, so I decided on two things. One, it would be a toll bridge, which meant I would need to add a toll booth of some kind whilst keeping to the fantasy theme. And two, I wanted to give the bridge some character by making it very crooked and kind of misshapen in parts, banged up and bruised and beaten. Thus was born the name the Crooked Toll Bridge. This land is highly contested and has seen a great deal of war, so a crooked, battered and beaten bridge just seemed to fit really well into the narrative. I made some extra notes while I was brainstorming. I definitely needed some kind of little toy with wheels, you'll see why later, but I also wanted to add some wildlife existence, or at least evidence of that, to the bridge, so I kept that in mind too. With the bridge design and the plan in mind, I set to work building the frame for the bridge. I won't drag the video on with footage of that portion because it's really straightforward and the video is already going to be long enough. But you can see in this picture, I cut out the drawing and pinned it to some cardboard that I had lying around. Then I traced around it, and then I repeated that step again so that I had two drawings, one for either side of the bridge. Then I cut them out and glued more cardboard in between them to finish the basic frame so that I had something I could work with. I didn't measure the width of the path, but if I had to guess, I'd say about 4 inches. Then I made the side platforms of the bridge. You can see in the drawing that I initially drew spires, but I decided to change these to like little palisade balconies that I felt would look better crooked than spires would. I glued them onto the side, then cut out the inner wall. It needs to be mentioned here that if you are doing your own style of bridge and want it flawless with proper angles and stuff like that, you just need to take your time and measure here to ensure that they do go on level. But because this bridge is called the Crooked Toll Bridge, I wanted the balconies to be, well, crooked and askew. I did this simply by just placing them on perfectly level at first, then just tilting one of the corners down a couple of millimeters to give that off-angle crooked look. I cut out some archer peepholes, but in the end I only used 2 of them and covered the middle one up, so if you are copying along with this project, don't waste time on the middle window. I also got some super thin cardboard from a cereal box just to glue inside the arch. In case you're curious, I've been using hot glue so far and pins to hold everything in place. The next step was to cut and texture a lot of bricks, and I really do mean a lot. I'm not sure how many bricks I used in the end, but it seemed like it was in the thousands. I knew it would take a while to cut and texture them all, so I put my Proxxon on the footrest that you can see here, stuck a movie on the TV and just chilled on the couch watching TV and cutting a whole lot in one big session. When they needed texturing, I did my usual trick of tossing them into a big tub with some actual rocks and then shaking them around for a bit. It works great. So this is the bridge so far. The frame is nice and sturdy, and for the little sewer tunnels I just cut a toilet tube roll in half and glued them in. The pillars either side of the bridge will eventually be cut off, but for now they're just placeholders so that I know what's going in that space. After cutting out and hot gluing a simple toll booth together, I wanted to put a base on it to lift it up from the ground a bit higher, so I drew around some XPS foam, cut it out and glued it on. A little tip here is if you're worried about the walls of the booth warping inwards, just glue some blocks of foam inside to act as support beams. I tried to smooth down the hot glue whilst it was still soft, just to decrease the amount of bulgy lumps that would be everywhere. Once dry and solid, I shaved the edges with my knife until I had it how I wanted it. Then it was just a case of choosing where I wanted it to go and gluing it into place, and as you can see I removed one of those pillar placeholders and it fit nicely there. Now it was time for another long and somewhat boring stage. I had to texture a bunch of wood. For this I used lollipop sticks. I bought these ones from Amazon. I know you folks like links of stuff that I use, so if I can and if I remember, I'll link as much as I can in the description for you all. I also used a knife and a stiff wire brush, and I then began the process of making a lot of these. It did take me a few hours, but I just put on the Hobbit audiobook and listened to that whilst I worked. It helped pass the time a little more quickly. Whilst you watch how I do them, this feels like a good time to talk about why this video has taken so long to come out. First and foremost is because this was a lot of work. Easily the most effort I've put into a project so far. I think I sunk over 100 hours into this bridge. The second reason is because some of you know I'm fighting with mental illness at the moment. Depression and grief brought on by the recent death of my dad, who I was very close to. Like, I literally saw him pretty much every day of my life. I did his grocery shopping for him every day, and he was just my best friend and greatest companion in life. So losing him is just, well, it's destroyed me, and this channel is my way of trying to distract myself from the pain of that grief by giving me something to work towards and focus on. But there are times I can just barely function, and all I can do is just lay on my bed or couch and drown in my suffering until the day ends and it starts all over again the next day. So there were times during this project where I left it alone for several days at a time, simply because I was too busy trying to survive the demons in my head that kept telling me I was worthless without my dad and I should just follow him into the afterlife. But anyway, if you want to help me fight my grief and honour the memory of my dad, I am planning to climb Ben Nevis in September, which is the tallest mountain in the British Isles. I have absolutely no hiking or mountain experience and no equipment. From my research, I have been doing the equipment is expensive. It's all proper hiking clothing and tents and camping gear. It's all very expensive, and I also want to try and get a GoPro to strap to my chest so that I will be kind of like taking you folks with me and I can upload the video when I come back. But to do that I need to raise funds. Now I have reached out to a bunch of camping professional suppliers to see if they wanted to sponsor, but they aren't interested. So I've set up a GoFundMe and I'm asking any of you who are willing and able, if you would like to donate, that would be great. I would really appreciate it, as though I've had some wonderful donators so far. They have been few and far between, and I'm still very short of reaching the goal, to the point that I think I'm just not going to reach that goal. The link to the GoFundMe is in the description of this video, and anything, no matter how big or small, that you can donate will be greatly appreciated to help go towards buying all the equipment I need in order to honour my dad and fulfill his bucket list. Moving on, the third and final reason this video has taken so long to come out is just as I did complete the project and started to edit the video, my PC died. I sent it into the repair shop to get it repaired. They took some time repairing it, they gave me it back, and they had repaired the wrong bloody thing. So I had to send it back again, and it got repaired again, and this time it worked. So I'm finally able to edit this. It's now Saturday at my time of speaking, and I'm hoping to get at least half of this done today, and then I should have more free time come Tuesday, which I'll get the other half done. So hopefully it'll be up next Friday, which won't mean anything to you because you don't know what date I'm talking. But anyway, back to the bridge, and sorry if I've bored you with that. I always struggle greatly with asking others for help and stuff, and I often end up just babbling on like I am right now. With the wood all textured and scored, I took some wood glue. I used the Gorilla Glue brand, but any brand will do as long as it's wood glue. I mean, you don't even have to use wood glue, but I prefer it. And I first focus on the palisade style balconies. I used my knife to cut out the shape of the windows as well as to make the spikes on the tips, and then I just glued them in place one by one. And again, if you are doing your bridge neat and tidy, make sure to measure and draw out the spikes with a pencil to ensure that you do get them even. But as we have established by now, this is a battered and beaten crooked toll bridge, and this was a great opportunity to add some more imperfections to the spikes to enhance that worn down makeshift feel of it. For inside the balconies, I sliced some of the bricks I made earlier into very thin slices and glued them down to represent a basic floor. A cool suggestion here: if you are making your bridge fancier and more elegant than me, you could plank this area with varnished wood or even add a rug. I used little cubes of XPS foam to make foundation supports in the corners. I covered up that middle window with more wood. I used some actual twig stems to make a frame along with some coffee stirrers. As you might notice, I added some little benches beneath the arch peepholes too. Now, when it comes to the planks of wood, they aren't just floating there, so I used some tiny little nail art gems to resemble bolts. They're a little fiddly to pick up, but if you just moisten a cocktail stick with a smidge of glue, that grips them a little bit better and makes it easier to grab one and then spear it in place. For reference here, I'm still using the Gorilla wood glue at this stage, and it doesn't matter what colour the gems are because we will be painting over them later. A keen eye will notice that I skipped the plank in the very middle. That is deliberate because I plan to hang something there in the future. I haven't decided what exactly, maybe a flagpole or a banner or something, I don't know, but it didn't need a bolt there in any case. The lore behind this bridge for my D&D campaign is that this bridge is the only bridge for miles around that can get wagons and horses across the river. So throughout the years it has been attacked, besieged and raided by many different factions and nations as they sought to gain control of this vital choke point. And these balconies were just hastily built in the middle of a siege battle as a way of plugging holes in the bridge wall that was caused by the initial assault, as well as to give a place for defenders to shoot their arrows and bolts at the attackers. So it's important to me that they represent that they have been very worn-torn, is that a word? No, it's not, I mean war-torn. And I wanted them to look very basic to show that they were built in haste under extreme pressures of ongoing war. This is how it looks once I am done. Next, I wanted to get the bricks in place, or at least get them started, especially around the arches. I put some wood glue on a pallet, dipped the bricks into the glue, and then placed them on the bridge. No particular pattern, in fact I tried to do it so that it had no clean pattern at all, with different sizes and shapes, to add to that crooked, imperfect look. There's still quite a lot to get through on the building stage alone, and we've already gone on for a little bit. So in keeping with giving you folks what you prefer, which according to the vote was to have bigger videos split into multiples, I'll continue with the building portion of the bridge now, and then with the painting and decorating side of it, we will leave that for the next video. So moving on, once I had framed the main archway, I used some of the black foam cubes to add an extra trim around the arch, just to give it more of a 3D effect. Then I added a long strip all the way along about where the path would be on the other side of the wall. There's no real purpose for this other than I just wanted to break up what is going to be a large amount of main bricks. So I did it by adding this divide. I figured it would keep it interesting and make it pleasing to the eye and stop it from looking too plain. You can also see I'm using some basic pins to hold some of the bricks in place because I pushed them up tight together and it's wood glue so it doesn't dry instantly, which kept kind of making them pop out of shape a bit, so the pins solved that problem. I cut some of the bricks into thinner strips to frame around the block of XPS that I used earlier to lift up the toll booth, And this is what we have so far. It's already starting to take good shape, I think. My next step was to let those framing bricks, as I call them, dry so that they wouldn't slip or slide once I started putting on the main stones. In the meantime, I took some of those lollipop sticks which I had textured earlier and turned into planks, and I began framing the toll booth in a typical fantasy style, just to add more interest to it so that it wasn't just a plain rectangular block. Again, keep your own theme in mind. If you want it pristine, measure carefully and take your time. If you want it crooked, beaten, worn down and misshapen like mine, make sure to snip away some of those clean edges and cuts just to add those imperfections in there. Back to the main bricks, a few things of note here. I've cut these a lot thinner and more narrow because I want them to kinda resemble stacked slate. I didn't want proper forged bricks like modern housing or anything like that. I just wanted to feel almost like they'd just walked around and found bricks and rocks on the floor and then brought it back to the bridge and just stacked them on top of each other. So these main bricks, they vary in length, they vary in thickness, and they vary in width. As much variety as possible. Like previously, I just dab them in some wood glue and stick them on. I'm not bothered about any gaps or holes I leave behind because I will either leave them empty to further emphasize that worn down look, or I'll fill them in later so that they look like somebody found a hole in the bridge, just went and picked up a rock off the ground and then jammed it in it to fill it in. Eventually I got to this point and it already felt like I had been gluing bricks for days, so I needed a break. I left it all to dry a bit and worked on making a door for the toll booth. To do so, I just drew the desired shape on some cardboard, cut it out and then stuck more lollipop stick planks onto it. Then I used some coffee stirrers to go across horizontally so that they would kind of resemble metal frames that you see in some of them old fantasy doors. That was put aside for the glue to dry once more. I went back to the bricks. Back and forth I went, trying not to go mind-numbingly insane from gluing all the bricks into place. I went back to the door and snipped the coffee stirrers, shaved the edgings with my craft knife to tidy them up. Then I cut some little bits from cocktail sticks and glued them on to resemble hinges. Then back to bricks, putting more in place, then letting them dry whilst working on something else and so forth. This time I focused on some brick pillars that would go at the end of the bridge. At first I made them neat and tidy, but once I had them lined up against the bridge they just looked wrong because everything else was crooked and misshapen. So I remade them, taking care to ensure imperfections as often as I could, even if it was just like a minor fault and error in the construction. One of my doggos seemed very impressed with the bridge so far. Look at that cute goofy face. 752 years later, I had finally finished laying all the bricks. I was so proud of myself for getting through that. I almost quit, it got so tedious. I got it on the outside, the inside, the pathway, and underneath the main arch. All that was left to do was to use some larger stubby chubby bricks to line across the top of the walls. Here is a quick photograph to show you how we are looking at this point in time. We started with this, and now we look like this. I don't know what you guys think, but personally I think it looks absolutely stunning, and we aren't even close to finished yet. To add some texture to the walls of the toll booth, I used Greenstuff Wales beach sand ground texture. I had originally gotten this to use for some basic Deep King bases, and had plenty left over, so I thought why not? I coated this everywhere that was going to be plaster. The toll booth, the interior of the palisade balconies and so forth. Spending some time on the sewer tunnels, I didn't like that you could see all the way through. I wanted it to indicate that there may or may not be a deep, intricate labyrinth of dangerous sewer tunnels down there. Not just a tunnel that went through the bridge from one side to the other. So I glued in a divider. Then I used some cement ground texture to add some, well, texture to the sewer interior. I wasn't coating the whole thing, mainly just adding patches so that it wouldn't appear too smooth and out of place. I took a break at that point, a few days, and when I returned to it everything was completely dry and solid. I'd also kept an eye out for this beauty. Remember on the initial plans I mentioned wanting some kind of toy with wheels? Well, I got this and it works perfect. Perfect for what, you might ask? Well, mind your business because I'm not telling you. I'm joking, I'm going to show you right now. I use this to ride back and forth over the bricks on the pathway. This is an old bridge, and like I said, it's the only bridge around for miles that allows horse and wagons to get over the river. So it gets many convoys of wagons. I feel that the hard wooden and sometimes metal rimmed wheels of so many wagons going back and forth would wear down the stone over time and leave grooves behind. So I just used the toy bike to really put pressure on the foam to crush it down on both sides, to act as wagon wheel tracks basically. It works brilliantly, don't you think? I mean, if you don't believe me now, wait until you see it painted. It really stands out and just adds a brilliant texture of realism. Moving on, it was time to put the mortar between the bricks. To do this, I use very fine casting powder. Keep in mind that the bridge is completely dry at this point. That is very important. If your bridge is wet or damp, or you've got any glue that's still not dried, it could majorly mess this up. So you need it completely dry. No moisture or wet glue or anything like that. I take a big spoon and I just start scooping the casting powder all over the bricks. Then I use a massive fluffy makeup brush to spread it out and sweep it into all the crooks and crannies. It's messy for sure, but it's a quick and easy way to do it. I've got my baking tray beneath it to catch the excess. Then I get a little spray bottle of water, one that has a mist ability, because if you use anything more than a mist ability, it might be a little bit too strong and blow it right back out of the grooves. So spray it well to give the powder a really good soaking. And then before it can start to harden or set, just dab, pat and wipe it all over with a tissue to get it all off. This will remove the majority of the plaster from the surface, whilst leaving the plaster that's in the crooks and crannies behind. Just like you can see in this picture here, and I think it looks really good. There are many ways of adding mortar, just to be clear, so you do whatever way you prefer. I just chose this way for this project because it was quicker and easier than many of the other options. Once you've done one part and let it set a bit, then turn your bridge over and do the sides. You want to do the inside as well, all the walls, and as well as underneath the main arch. It is another tedious step, yes, but not as tedious as laying the bricks. Just slap on an audiobook or something and you will be done in no time. And next step, I told you this was a huge project with so much detail and extras, is to make the roof shingles for the toll booth and the pillars at the end of the bridge, along with the roof of the archer balconies. To make these, I use my Proxxon because I have it, but if you don't have one, you can do this same thing with a pencil and a knife. If you didn't want to use foam, you can even use cardboard, or you can even cut up drinking straws. For me, using a Proxxon is a very quick process, so that's how I did it. I marked and scored the side, and then cut off a thin strip. Then marked and scored the side again, then cut off another thin strip. It's a straightforward process, and it's very easy. I think it took me about 20 minutes altogether to make all the shingles I would need, and then some. Once I had enough strips, I cut them into individual rectangles, because I just like doing them individually rather than in strips. At this point, I realised that I forgot to put the roofs on the pillars, so I quickly made some basic roofs and glued them on. And then I got back to the shingles. I started from the bottom of the roof and placed a strip of glue and then worked my way up. The reason I'm starting from the bottom is so that it can overlap as I'm working upwards. If you start from the top, you won't get that overlapping right, so keep that in mind. I also wanted them to look crooked and poorly built, just like the rest of the bridge. We keep emphasizing that throughout this whole video, so I made sure that some of them, I kind of ripped the corner off a little bit, or I squeezed them a bit too hard in my fingers, or I put them on a little bit crooked. Just little things like that work wonders to add that misshapen look. And remember, most of this bridge was rebuilt in haste during wars by soldiers, not builders, so they wouldn't have had the skilled patience or calm environment to make it look any better than it does. With the shingles all in place, the building part was finally done. All that was left to do was to base coat it in a mix of matte Mod Podge and some black paint. Mostly Mod Podge with about 10% black paint. This will seal it all into place and create a nice solid barrier across the entire project and ensure that nothing falls loose. And that is that, folks. I'll leave this video there as per your request so that it doesn't get too long. And in the next video, we will paint this bad boy. What do you think of it so far? I love it. It's coming out miles better than I thought it would. Oh, and before I go, right now this is called Project Warzone, but eventually I'm going to name this board. At first I thought, oh, I can call it Raventhorpe. But then I remembered that The reason that that's in my head is because it's from Assassin's Creed, so I can't use that name. What do you think I should call these lands? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't, I recommend you subscribe to catch the future videos. Bye for now, folks. Toodaloo.